Access Radio. WIAX, the future of radio and podcast. No limit to what we do.
Jamel, celebrity vocal coach right here, and I am a part of Give It Life.
And ratchet, we
And
bringing
real extra ratchet, raunchy.
Let it be everywhere, like.
What we got coming up? Those shops is upstairs, but we out here by our hustle, man. This nigga got hit the wall off the set.
Phoenix, soul, clarity and connection through conversation. Phoenix, soul, clarity and connection through conversation.
What's good?
Legend of the Phoenix. What's going on?
All right, this is Thursday. You're listening to Phoenix Soul, Clarity Connection Through Conversation. I am Yaz HURSTON, and you are tuning in. Today is Monday, January 30th. We're going to have an incredible show today. But I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge what you're listening to us on. You're listening to us on iAccess Radio, the future of radio and podcast. There is no limit to what we do. Big shout out to Al Williams in the studio right here. If you want to call us, you can call us at 347-708-0216. You know, I never remember this, so I have to say it again. 347-708-0216. And welcome to our show. No, we have been a little bit. We had a little break. I think everybody's been doing breaks, but we're back. We're going to be doing some remote shows. We're going to do some in-person shows. But I want to say I had an incredible holiday time period off. You know, we were doing a lot of different things. But I want to say it's really good to see you, TJD Spence. How's it going?
Feel refreshed over the break myself, so glad to be
Feeling
back.
refreshed over the break. Anything to share specifically?
Just making more music, more lounge type music, my favorite. And we'll be looking forward to this year. I have a lot of gigs coming up about the summertime, springtime. Should be a busy year for me.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's what's up, DJ D Spence. Busy. Got things to do, but still finding time to be here with me and you today at Phoenix Soul. So today is, as we said, I guess Monday's the last Monday of the month of January. And we're bringing in a very special guest. All of our guests are special. But, you know, it's always important when you connect with somebody for years and then you're able to see the fruits of their labor. You're able to see the progress. You're able to see their success. And I'm one to say that I'm honored today to interview this young man here because I think I've watched him throughout his years and seeing where he is now and success. So let's get to the bio real quick and then we'll get to the person. Dr. Malik A. Small is a middle school principal in the community of East New York, Brooklyn, with over 15 years of experience in educational leadership, both in charter as well as district schools. He is also a member of the New York State Commission of African American History And Dr. Small is a passionate advocate for social justice, restorative practices, culturally responsive education, equity in schools, and empowering children, families, and communities to close both the opportunity gap as well as the exposure gap. Dr. Small is a public speaker and a frequent guest and panelist in forums that include Phoenix Soul Podcast, The Heather B Show, Raw Perspective, the Y Tribe Podcast, and The Selma B Show. Dr. Small is also a proud member of the Off School Grounds Coalition. He also sits as second vice president on the Mount Vernon Youth Borough Board and is a member of the Eagle Foundation BERC pilot design team for the Education Equity Action Plan. Dr. Small is currently working on several books and was recently published in the National Association of Secondary School Principals Journal. Lastly, Dr. Small is the CEO of the Acacia Consulting Group and Acacia Productions. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, fam, welcome Dr. Malik Small.
Dubbing in the club, Wyclef
I'm fine.
John Forte,
Let's just make sure that you can be heard.
Mic check.
Mic check.
1 2 1 2.
That's what's up. So Malik.
Yes.
So let's be clear. Let's a little full disclosure. I think I've known you since 2004 or 2003. I want to say no. I want to say 1990.
Yeah. It was the 90s for sure.
Yeah. Definitely that. I'm trying
Early
to look at
90s.
this. I'm trying to look at your. Oh yeah, that sounds right. So your time was 1996, and I left in 95, right? So I would say 93, 94. That's a long time. That's before like a lot of things were happening. I think I met you when we were kind of all trying to find our path at City College, at the City College CUNY.
We were student government and protests.
All of that.
All kind of good times.
Yeah. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your background or talk about what was going on in your life prior to becoming an educator?
You know, I got into education by accident. I got into education at the time that I got into education. I was actually working in business and finance, and before that, doing some work in entertainment. I was in law school. Then my son was born. Mm-hmm. I was about 25 or so, and I remember sitting in my office down at the Fifth Avenue office, and we were working and making cold calls on a Saturday morning. And I had my son; he was still an infant, in a stroller, sitting there, and I'm sitting at my desk with my call list and my mirror, because when you're making those calls, you gotta smile, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at him, and he's sitting in a carriage, and I'm like, this ain't cool. Like, there's gotta be a better way, right?
Right.
And around the same time, I stopped to see my father one day, and he had a gentleman at the house who happened to be a teaching fellow, mm-hmm. and I'd never heard of the teaching fellows up until then. And he told me about it, and I couldn't believe he said you can go to school, get a free degree, and a job all at the same time. I'm like, I could work a job, get a free degree, have regular hours, not have to take my kid to the office on Saturday. I'm like, let me give this a try. So I applied, and the rest is history.
So when you applied, what did you apply for? Just a teacher?
I applied to be a teacher because at the time I was actually in law school, and I had to make a decision: did I want to continue to go the law route, or did I want to go the education route? And so at the time I said, if I'm going to go the education route, it's to be a principal. So I knew from the very beginning I wanted to be a principal, but obviously you have to be a teacher first. So I applied to be a teacher, but I already knew I wanted to be a principal. I only spent about 4.5 years in the classroom.
Wow. So when you knew you wanted to be a principal, what was the premise behind that? Was it shaping cultures, creating
No.
like what was the reason for
None of
wanting
it.
to be okay?
My godmother, my late godmother, the Dr. Margie Henderson Dunbar, was a principal, a middle school principal at that time, and a middle school principal who was doing just revolutionary things at the time, taking children on trips to China and just doing amazing things. And I think she gave my mother her start in education before my mom decided to become a medical doctor. And she was my godmother. She gave us the house that we lived in. So we grew up in a brownstone on 148 between Compton and Amsterdam. She gifted that house to us. So she was just an amazing woman. She was a principal. She was a professor in the Black Studies Department at the City College of New York. She was a businesswoman. She was an AKA, and she was just everything. But most importantly, she was my godmother. And she would always, I remember, give us gifts, and those gifts would always be books. I remember the Time Life Volcano book that she gave me. I remember the Charlie Brown encyclopedias that she gave me.
Wow.
I remember when she went to the Mercedes-Benz dealership and bought an E-Class, a champagne-colored E-Class, and drove it off the lot. And she was so happy. She said to us, she was like, "Listen, I just bought this and I paid all cash." And she was that type of woman. She was a community advocate. She was just well before her time. And again, she was my inspiration for becoming a principal.
And so middle school, it's an interesting population, right? Because
that's where all the magic is at.
That's where. So explain that a little bit more. Why choose middle school as opposed to elementary or secondary?
Well, honestly, when I was young, my reasons have changed. When I was young, when I was in my 20s, I decided to go middle school because I felt I was too close in age to the high schoolers.
Oh, I see.
So at that time, I felt that wouldn't work. And I certainly wasn't interested in little kids, even though I would tell anybody having my son made me a better teacher, and becoming a teacher made me a better father. So my son, who, again, I went into education when he was an infant. So it was kind of, learning all of these fantastic things all at the same time, how to be a father, how to be a teacher. But again, later I decided to stay in middle school because I learned that middle school is really where it's at. A lot of people really think, when they think about children who drop out of school, they typically think they drop out of high school, but that's not true. They drop out physically in high school, but you've already lost them mentally, socially, spiritually, emotionally in middle school. And so if you can capture them in middle school and make them strong in middle school, then they have a fighting chance to go on and do great things.
You have any examples or instances where you have seen your presence needed for a middle school child, and then you came in and then you changed it all around?
I mean, I've been doing this so long. I got so many stories. I have a young fella. I think every year, and certainly every 3 years, as we cycle them, I find a group of youngsters, and there's always one special one that I want to take under my wing. So I'm going to tell you a story about two, right? One who's currently a student, he's an 8th grader. He came to me last year as a 7th grader, and he was heavily involved in gangs. He really wanted to be a professional Crip. That's what he wanted to be. But at the same time, he also would have conversations with me about being a mechanical engineer and doing other great things, right? And so, but when he came to me, he was broken, right? He needed something. He needed somebody. And when I sat down, I remember within a couple of weeks of him being in my school, he had gotten into a major fight, and I'm sitting there having a conversation with him. I'm like, "Bro, how'd you end up here?" He was like, "Because I hit the last principal." I'm like, "Well, why you ain't hit me?" He was like, "Because you took the time to talk to me." And that was powerful, right? And so I've been working with him since. And now if you see him a year later, nothing but smiles all day, every day. And he's just on just a positive path and a positive trajectory. I got another young fella. He's a graduate of mine. He's 22 now. He came to me in COVID. When he came to me in COVID, he was depressed. He was damn near suicidal. And I knew him for several years before that. He was the one student that, as a principal, I got professionally written up for, because I had to use some savory words one time to get his attention, right? But sometimes you got to do what you got to do to catch the air, and I wouldn't change a thing. And so he came to me again. I took him under my wing. That was first year of COVID, so that's about 3 years ago. Again, broken. He was just experiencing so many of his friends were getting killed and getting murdered, and he really just was lost. Again, just holler at me, come talk to me. I told him, come see me once a week, and let's sit down and let's shape and mold and let's figure out a path for you. Now this kid is just doing well. He's working. He's an aspiring boxer. Also looking to study Islam, so I just put him in touch with some of the brothers. So he went to the mosque for the first time last week, and he's doing great things. And so again, for me, when I think about this work and when I think about being a principal, this is really, we're in the business of saving lives, right? The lives we don't touch, someone else will, and then they're gonna come back and they're gonna touch you. So this is mission work.
Wow. So your role in being an educator, but a principal is not just clean cut, dry, get the curriculum together. There's a little bit more into it. And did you realize you're going to be doing that when you wanted to become a principal, or did it change suddenly once you got involved?
No, when I was thinking about becoming a principal, when I was working in charter actually, and I was an academy director,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew I wanted to be a principal already because again I came into education knowing I wanted to be a principal, and so I studied private schools, and I also studied my own life and looked at all the things that I was afforded as a child. I was in Africa by the time I was in fifth grade. I was already experiencing the arts and ballet and so forth. So our parents made sure we had everything, right? And so looking at my own personal life, studying charter school, and knowing that we can offer and we should be offering these things to our children, and realizing that we can replicate these things at scale, probably with the exception of class size, that was kind of how I modeled how I wanted to design a school. And so if you look at our school now, we're in the process of building a multimedia center. So our kids will have everything you see here in this studio, we'll have, right? There'll be a podcast, broadcast studio. We'll have a standalone recording studio. We are in the process of building out a hydroponics lab. We have a golf team. We have an esports team. We have a media club. We have a debate team that only debates private schools, and so forth and so on. Because again, I wanted to bring to the children and the families that I serve just a little bit of what I had growing up, and but certainly those things that they deserve, because we know what's more important than the closing of the academic, the achievement gap, which is a bunch of bullshit if you ask me, is closing of the exposure gap, right? So making sure that they're exposed to and have access to everything that anybody else does, and certainly things that they wouldn't imagine they would have access to in the communities that they come from.
So your trajectory of becoming an educator and a principal, you had to go through a number of I guess a number of courses. You had to go through a number of certifications. Just for the person listening for the first time or someone interested, can you share with us like what you went through to get to where you are, or just
Well,
maybe your degrees and everything?
bachelor's and I have 3 degrees from City College. I love City College. So
Love City
bachelor's,
College. Yep. Hmm.
bachelor in literature. That's probably a double bachelor's in literature slash Black studies. Master's in secondary English education. Masters of science in educational leadership. A doctorate in educational leadership. I'm about to start another certification course in about a week at Harvard to do an advanced certification in educational leadership. And then a lot of other certifications and things.
So why are these certifications significant in education?
Honestly, for me, they're significant. There are many people that don't bother necessarily getting all of those degrees or even going into admin with the second master's degree. I think it's important because I think that the idea of being a lifelong learner is absolutely important. If you're not continuously growing, if you're not continuously sharpening your tool belt, then how are you going to go out and make the change and be the change that you're espousing to be and that you're asking other people to be? So I'm just a bit of a nerd. Shout out to Harlem Nerds.
Well, what did you say? If you're gonna walk the walk, you gotta talk the talk.
Absolutely.
Listening to Phoenix Soul, and we have Dr. Malik Small. And again, if you want to call us and talk to him, you can call us 347 708 0216. So you talked about, and I've seen this a lot in social media, you just joined a commission for New York State. As a matter of fact, it's the New York State Commission on African American History. And from what I've read, um, the commission is partnering with community-based organizations. This commission will bring New Yorkers together through events, cultural programming, scholarly research, and other activities that promote a greater understanding of the history and achievements of African Americans and people of African descent throughout the state. Why is this significant now, Malik, in 2023 to have this commission?
First and foremost, I think it's important to acknowledge Governor Hochul for having, again, the foresight and the strength of character to use her executive power to empower this commission to work. It's a commission that prior to her using her executive power, it was just an idea. The first thing she did when she got into office was empower this commission to work. This commission is led by 15 commissioners. Me being one of those commissioners is led by Commissioner Dr. Lester Young and Dr. Hazel Dukes. So again, first and foremost, just to be in the company of just some of the greatest thought leaders, some of the greatest kind of warriors, particularly for our people, particularly in the area of civil liberties and education, is just humbling, and I'm just excited to be a part of that work. And again, we just started. We literally only had our inaugural meeting a few weeks ago, and our second meeting is coming up next week in Yonkers. But again, the idea of bringing New York State together, knowing first of all, New York State is a leader in the country, in the entire country, when it comes to education, when it comes to kind of progressive thought and ideas. And so to have a commission at this particular time where our people are continuing to, if you ask me, I think this is the best of times as well as the worst of times. We can look and see what's happening to our men and our women in the street, what's happening every time we run up against ill-prepared and ill kind of police officers who are not ready to do the job of policing. When you look in the news, because you can't just kind of keep that in policing, you got to look at the work of the judiciary, because if police are being held accountable, then I certainly think that we'd see a kind of a curbing of what's going on. So again, when I say the best of time, the worst of times, even with all of those things going on, our people are doing great things across this country, right? And so the work of this commission really is to change the narrative, right? Because the problem isn't that we're doing great things, right? The problem is that there's an inequity when it comes to telling our story. There's an inequity when we see how we're portrayed in the media and on the news and in the movies and on television. And so part of the work of the commission is to bring equity to our story so that we can look at ourselves and not define ourselves by the worst of us, but define ourselves by the best of us, recognizing that there are parts of our community that need our help. But again, we should be defined by the best of us, defined by the best of our experiences, defined by the best of what we were able to bring to this city and to this state and to this country. And that's some of what the work of the commission will be doing.
Well, that sounds awesome and exciting. I heard what you said. This is the first, you're just starting. But is it your hopes that you play a role to educate more people about the commission? I mean, you've certainly done that a lot with just your presence, but we really haven't heard a lot about it, just generally. And so how can we support the efforts of the commission as you move forward? Would you be able to share that?
Well, I wouldn't be able to share because I'm not sure yet. But I will certainly keep you in the loop. I know we have a meeting next week, and then as a commission, we'll be at caucus in a couple of weeks. And I think when we get to caucus, that's where we'll really begin to flesh out and what our kind of work metric is and some of the specifics that we're going to be looking to kind of specific areas we'll be looking to impact. But again, I'll certainly keep you updated as I know and as we as a commission begin to shape and mold the specifics around what the work will be. I'll certainly keep you updated with that.
So do you know what it is that you'd like to get out of it?
Yes, I'd like to impact specifically policy around state standards governing African American history in schools. So for me, I've been teaching African American history in schools since I've been in schools. So the problem is certainly not that there aren't curriculum available. There are many curriculum out there dealing with our history and dealing with it in a great way. That isn't the problem. For me, when I look at it, the problem is twofold. Number one, there's no accountability measures by way of state standards to govern how we implement African American history in schools, number one. And number two, there's no pipeline to educate teachers so that they're prepared to teach it when they have that curriculum in their hands. So again, the problem isn't that there isn't curriculum. There's all kind of curriculum. The problem is that there isn't accountability and that there isn't preparation at the university levels for teachers coming into the system to be able to teach this curriculum. And so those are two things I'm certainly going to advocate for.
Right. And so this commission can actually have oversight over that?
I don't think oversight would necessarily be the word, but I certainly think influence on the conversation.
Influential methods.
I certainly think that
I was giving you more.
We'll have some influence on the conversation.
I was giving you more, giving you oversight. But no, that's excellent. And so to also be around the other commissioners and to sit at their feet, I guess, is also pretty awesome too.
Absolutely.
But this has not been anything new to you. You certainly grew up in a home where folks that we would normally probably think would not be easily attainable or easily speak. They've been in your house and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I've had the distinct privilege of being in the audience of so many of the greatest people on earth, and many in my home, whether it be Milana Karenga, whether it be Winnie Mandela, whether having the opportunity to sit in the audience of and hear Bill Gates speak, or just Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben and Dr. Scobie and Dr. Jeffries and Dr. Small. Again, I'm very privileged to have been in a household of educators who are committed to telling our story, who are committed to uplifting our people, who are committed to ensuring that they left this world in a better place than they met it. And I'm just very fortunate to be the son of Professor James Small, to be the son of Dr. Carol Small, and I'm living a dream.
Shout out to the Smalls. They're awesome. I had an opportunity. I think I want to say your dad was one of my professors in school, or I just sat in the class and just snuck and just enjoyed it. But being in the city college and having the opportunity to take Black Studies, I'm sure many of us took it at city college and we didn't even realize that wound up being our majors because we just took so many courses, right? But being
it was more than just a course. It was
courses. I mean,
everything.
I took like.
It was where the fun was at.
I remember, right? Well, that's true too. I remember somebody was like, "Well, you also got a minor." I said, "I got a minor in what?" It was like Black Studies. I said, "Oh, okay. Well, it makes sense, But being at City College and having parents that were able to provide you with a strong foundation. How do you think that's translated to you being a parent?
Number one, I'm fortunate every day to still have my parents, and I'm fortunate to have them at this age. But I'm more fortunate that I can sit with my dad and not just have father-son conversation, but colleague-to-colleague conversation.
It has to be awesome.
I mean, for me, that's everything. I tell my mom, and I speak to my parents frequently. We literally live 4 minutes away, so that I'm fortunate about that. But again, I still wake up every day, and I told my mom just the other day, and I hope it doesn't sound goofy, I still look to make my parents proud every day. And I'm glad that I have the opportunity every day to go out and do that and to have that be my guiding light. When I speak to my wife, I speak to her about the work because she's like, you got to find balance. I'm like, babe, you got to understand, this work is, I get it honest, like it's in my genes. I am my father's son. I am my great-grandfather's great-grandson. This is the family business. Fighting for our people is the family business. It's what we do. And so you got to understand that this is our life. And, as a father of a youngster, and he's not a youngster, he's 22, the truth of the matter is you take as much as you can from your parents, but there really is no kind of book on how to do it. And, me being a father of one, I only have one chance to get it right, so, and I'm still working on it.
Yeah, every day it's new. Yeah.
I think I'm an expert in many areas. I do not think I'm an expert in the area of being a father, and I'm working on it. So.
Well, that's really cool. what made you realize that when you said, well, I mean, I think you growing because you said when you were learning to become a teacher, it was help shaping you to become a better father. Like what made you realize that?
It's just, life is what happens when life is happening, right?
Mhm.
And no matter how much you think you know or about what you're doing, it really is every day. It's just another opportunity to learn, another opportunity to do better, another opportunity to get it right. And I don't ever profess to have the answer.
Mhm.
I just wake up and give it my best every day as a father, as a friend, as a husband, as a son. And I just wake up and hope that I'm doing a decent job every day.
As a parent, I was talking to a couple of other parents, and we recognize there's this time period where we call it where the extraterrestrial aliens come and take our children away, and then leave us with some kid that we don't know, and then they come back. Our children come
Yeah.
back, and then they want to be coming like one of our best friends. Have you reached that with your son?
No.
Well, come back, hurry up and come back.
But we are working on it every day. Every day trying to get
That's
a little
hilarious.
better.
No, well, they do come back. I just want to let you know they come back.
My mom, who's an adolescent pediatrician, says technically they're insane until they reach a certain age.
It's true.
Yeah, he didn't get to that age yet. We're working on it.
Okay, well, they
Yeah.
come back and then they say you were right.
But I gotta believe
They
because
tell you were right and all that.
I never thought I would be sitting here today. I grew up in Harlem during the 80s and 90s during the crack era. You know, it was just what it was. I'm fortunate to still be sitting here. So I'm happy every day. I wake up every morning. Hey God, thank you. Good looking.
I find it interesting, again, going back to you being a parent and raising our children today versus when we were growing up, um,
Different.
and how I don't know if they think it's rough coming in Harlem now, but
Oh my
do you
gosh.
often share do you often share how life was? I don't know if it's harder or easier because it's kind of rough now too.
It is not what it was.
I don't know the social media stuff, and then like it was not how it was, but I also thought that we kind of battled it differently, right? And so like how do you and you're a principal, so you see this on a larger scale. Like, what do you think is the difference now versus when we were growing up
Well, I know
for
what the
young
difference
people?
is. When we grew up, we had channel 257, 9, 11,
And that's it.
sometime 31, and
Sometimes
sometime 13.
that's
And we
true,
had to get up to change the channel.
right? With
That
rabbit
was the biggest
antennas,
difference. So the
yes.
difference was we had to believe what our parents told us. There was nothing else out there. It
Makes
was what they
sense.
said. It wasn't nothing else. Now, these kids say they have so much information, unfiltered information come their way. And we had our parents to filter through that little bit of information. And I think that's what made us successful. When I would sit with my dad and we'd watch TV, it was always watching while he was giving a critical analysis of the show at the same time, right? Um, I think that's one of the biggest differences, just the sheer amount of information that they have access to that we didn't. And we all know that information for information's sake can be good or it can be bad because it's what you do with the information and how you let it impact you. And I think that's one of the biggest differences.
Kids being impressionable these days, I find that you got to kind of double down and give them information, but you have to find a way to let them know that you actually know what you're talking about. And sometimes it's with third party validators, right? And other times it's just having dialogue. I found that many people that I know that have gone into the education field, they are very patient people. Do you find yourself a patient person?
Yes, with children. And I'm working on becoming more patient with adults.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
but no,
But that's
I'm so,
interesting because you have a staff.
I know. And I love them. I have the best staff in New York
It's the
City. I
right
tell
thing
them
to
every
say,
single
right?
day.
Yeah.
No, but honestly, I learned a lot coming out of COVID. Last year, when we first came out of COVID, I thought it was the children that were impacted, and we poured so much into children and didn't pour the same amount into the adults, and it was the adults that needed it more.
The adults meaning the teachers?
The adults, right, the teachers, the people
Staffing.
directly in front of children. And so this year's commitment was to create a space of mindfulness, a space every single day, every single meeting where we're pouring into staff and building them and creating spaces for them to be emotionally okay and psychologically okay. And in doing so, I think we've transformed the school this year. It's an entirely different dynamic. But children, I've never had an issue with. I think I'm the kid whisperer, and I'm working on my own son. But me and the kids, we get along like just great. And my mission has always been with the kids. I want them to be more like me than they want to be like the dope boy. So they see me, I'm fresh. They see what I'm dropping, and that's fresh. They see how I talk, and they feel that. And I want them to be more like me and want to be more like me than they want to be like the dope boy. And so I'm able to just really kick it with them in a real way and develop real relationships with them every single day. And I can't believe they pay me for it.
Wow, that must be nice. Don't say fresh, though, anymore. We don't say fresh.
I do.
Oh, you do? Well, I think that's pretty awesome. And I think it's also important that we acknowledge you for your work. And I don't think we did pay a lot of attention to all the facets during COVID. And so, first of all, thank you if you had a school during COVID and you had to go through that. I'd love for you to share with us like what that process was like. Did you lose any? How were you getting the kids back? I mean, like as far as not staying in touch with them, losing them. Like,
oh no, we had
did you stay in touch with everybody? Did everybody
absolutely
attend school? And
every single day, our children they were on those computers.
That's awesome.
Every single day. We worked with Jamila Davis and her program to bring an after-school segment to them that was also online, and we're able to do great things with them. So we're able to capture their attention all day into the evening, and they look forward to coming online with us every day because being at home and it's just them and their parents and sometimes just them, we were their everything. And so just sitting there on those computers every day, it was what it was, and we made it work. And we were able to stay in touch with every single child and make sure that every single child was safe and we knew where they were at, and we were able to really support each other during COVID, both in school as well as remotely, because there was a small population that was in the school building also.
Oh, they were still in there as well? Yeah. Oh, I see. So when you were dealing with COVID, I know you just talked about mental health was critical. How were you able to balance the mental health needs and still do with your educators, with your staffing? Being East New York pre-COVID, it's also a lot of things that are going on in the community.
Absolutely.
How were you able to find the mental health wellness there?
Because we, again, through COVID, we actually created organizations specifically to help deal with those issues. So whether we're talking about off-school grounds that was created by Dennis McKeesey, or whether we're talking about the work of Brianna Greenspan and Hal Elrod and Miracle Morning, we brought all of these resources to our teachers, to our students, and to our families so that we can stay connected during this time and just stay together. And so we tapped into all of our resources. And I would say that every day, because I was working remotely also, I was only in physically maybe once a week. And that was because going into COVID, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And so I had to focus on my health also at the same time, which I did, and successfully dropped over 40 pounds in COVID, as well as started 3 businesses, et cetera, et cetera. So I took the time that God gave us.
Use that time, right. That's right. That was a reset.
But we just stayed very connected. And we were able to stay connected with people, not only in New York, but across the country and across the world through our work with these multiple organizations. And we brought those organizations into the school because these organizations were made up of educators and entertainers and politicians and businessmen. And we just stayed connected and supported each other and loved on each other and kept each other uplifted so that we could come through the storm and now be in the midst of the recovery.
So your way of teaching, is there a certain style, or is there a certain approach that you have in your school?
Well, yes. Number one, we lead with love. If you can't love all my children, you can't work there, or else you probably wouldn't want to. So again, we open up every class, not just every meeting, but every class is open, we open up with mindfulness, right? And then we ensure, number one, that we're taking care of the social, emotional, spiritual needs of our children first, so that we can get to the academic needs, and making sure that we have not only a school counselor, but a team of people just to deal with the social, emotional needs, because you can't teach a child if they're not ready to learn, because they're not in a social, emotional, spiritual space to do so. So for me, my approach is always a holistic approach. So we educate the entire child. Again, yes, it's important to look at the achievement and performance, but that's only a small segment. Because again, when you think education, those first of all, the test, the standardized tests, were literally designed to prove that white people were smarter than black people, right? So I take it with a grain of salt. It's a measure, but it's a small measure because it wasn't designed for our children to be successful. For me, and furthermore, when you look at standardized testing, it is not an indicator of future success. When you look at every Fortune 500 leader of any company in this country, they weren't straight A students, most of them, right? So again, what are all those tests and those numbers for, except for probably tracking them into prison, right? Through and we don't. That's a whole different conversation if you want to get into about prison reform. But again, those tests were literally designed to track out children into prisons to say that they weren't smarter than others. And so I take it with a grain of salt. For me, we look holistically at the child. How can we bring experiences to them that are going to build them into students who are globally ready, globally connected? Shout out to Joe Carbon and One World, which is a private public partnership we have to ensure that we're teaching children character building through teaching them what it means to be a global citizen, looking at it through the lens of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, right? But that's another part for another time. We offer at the middle school level, besides math, English, science, and social studies, all of my students take French, right? All of my students take a course called UI UX, which is user interface, user experience. So we're teaching them about how to code and teaching them about the metaverse, etc. Every one of my students takes an Africology class, right? It's important that they learn about their history, to learn African American history and how it shaped this country and shaped the world. So all of my students take 3 years of Africology and so forth and so on. We want to bring courses to our students that are going to cause them to be leaders, that are going to give them voice. We're going to see them be advocates. So we bring in organizations like Intel Freedom with Tamika Mallory and my son, et cetera, to work with our kids. We bring in other organizations so that our students have the opportunity to participate in protests, participate in struggle, whether it be learning about environmental struggle and sustainability and protesting there, or whether it be standing side by side at Yale University with Benjamin Crump and protesting police brutality there. We want to teach our students that they are the ones who will go out and change this world and make this a better world to live in, and make this the America that America itself dreams that it could and should be.
Sure. So, how is that received with all of the rigor, all of the things that you're putting into the young people? How do you see that? How do you feel that's being received?
At the end of the day, my major measure is happy children. If the children are happy, we're off to a good start. Can we do more work around math and English scores? Absolutely. If you look at it across the city, it's struggling there, and certainly in East New York, and those are issues that are systemic and issues that are generational, and those are issues we're still looking to work with. But at the end of the day, my measure is happy children, right? Are the children happy? We keep an open door policy to alumni. Our alumni come back every single day just to check on us and let us know that they're doing well, et cetera. And so the children are happy, the families are happy. We're there for the community, and they're happy with the work. That means we might be doing a good job.
So thank you first of all for that. You talked about the young man who wanted to be a professional crip, um, and you also talked about you being a social justice advocate. What resources or what do you think is out there to prevent this type of transition that's out there for our young men and women? And I'm sure you've seen that a few times and you've had to combat it. What resources are out there to help change that trajectory?
I'm going to put a lot of responsibility on school leaders,
Hmm.
right? Because if,
And not
if
parents.
school leaders,
Hmm.
well, parents, but certainly remember, the parents are just older versions of the children that we teach,
I agree. No, I
right?
agree.
So parents are doing the best that they can, given the circumstances that were presented to them,
Mhm.
right? They're not the professionals who are tasked with and who are paid to ensure that children have a positive trajectories. So again, I'm gonna put it back on school leaders, right? I'm gonna put it back on community leaders or those who claim to be community leaders, whether they be politicians, whether they be community-based organizations, etc. Right? These are the people and the places and the systems that commit themselves to the work, and so to the extent that they're doing the work positively, will be the extent to which we see improvement. And then conversely, the extent to which we see a lack of courageousness in those positions, right?
Right.
A lack of courageousness when it comes to be a school leader who cares more about his job than doing what's right for children, cares more about his job than ensuring that children are getting their history. I have a problem with that. So I know that if school leaders are being courageous and standing up and doing the work that they're called to do, because schools should be the hub of every community, then we can move the needle. But first, we got to get school leaders with some courage who care more about a job than they do about the community.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And really, really congratulate and commend folks that are going to this field because you don't just take on the curriculum of teaching, you're taking on being like a second guardian in some
Absolutely.
instances. And so thank you for that and acknowledging that. And your role, besides being a principal, how do you use that to shape other parts of your community, or just who you are? What do you do to shape other parts of your community?
I just ensure that I'm very kind of picky about where I lend my time to, and I want to lend my time to places and spaces and organizations that are going to have impact. I don't like wasting time, so um, I just spend my time and space in places where we can have positive impact, whether it be around mentorship, right? Whether it be around figuring out how to support those organizations that are looking to get the vote out, because we know how important the vote is going to be over the next 2 years, because we have to take the House 2 years from now, because currently Hakeem Jeffries has made history as the first African American leader of a political party, and we're hoping that in the next 2 years that he will be the Speaker of the House. So again, ensuring that I can lend myself to organizations that are helping to get the vote out, and so forth and so on. So I just like to put my time and give my time to people and spaces and organizations that are really getting the work done.
I think that's critical, utilizing our time. And thank you, Brooklyn of the Round Table. He said, now that's real. I don't know if you know who that is. But I think it's critical to be able to um, use your time wisely, and also be able to make an impact for those people who are just probably watching you, and they don't know your background or what's embedded in you. Like if there's a major issue happening right now, like let's tell me what you think the top three issues are right now, and how do you think the best way to approach it? Let's start off with what you think the top three issues are.
I'm going to first always lean into culturally responsive pedagogy and education, because
Mhm.
when you think about all of the pain and the hurt that's happening in our communities, particularly with our children, particularly with young folks killing each other, and remember, that's in some communities, because certainly we have communities across this nation that are flourishing, but those that are in trouble, again, when those young men look in the mirror, they're not seeing someone that they love. And because they look in the mirror and they don't look at someone that loves someone that they love, when they look at the next person that looks just like them, it's nothing to murder them. It's nothing to abuse them, so forth and so on. But I believe if you stand strong and rooted in your history, strong and rooted in those things where you can find a sense of pride, then that's going to be a great place to start around addressing the endemic problems of violence in our most impacted communities. Second of all, I think we've certainly got to look at policy and legislation, certainly around voting, to ensure that we can protect voting rights across this country, because it cannot be said enough. The power of the vote, the power of being able to be in position to impact legislation and policy. So I would say certainly that's the second one. I think I'm not going to say economics per se, because African Americans in this country, the GDP just for African Americans alone is in the several trillions of dollars. So that certainly isn't the problem. The problem, I would certainly say, is cultural cohesiveness, because when you're making that much money as a collective and that money is not being recirculated into the community, it's going out into other people's community quicker than we don't even get to touch our dollar before we give it away.
Now, why is that important?
You can't build wealth. First of all, this country has systemically worked to keep African Americans from building wealth, whether it's through redlining, whether it's through subprime mortgage lending, and so forth and so on. So again, there's a reason why. The only real wealth, period, is real estate, and home ownership really is the foundation of the building of generational wealth. And so again, when we're getting money and giving away, rather than getting the money and figuring out how we can use it to reinvest in our community, like Pinky Cole is doing, like EYL is doing around educating our people around financial literacy. Those are the things that I think are going to be important. So it's a coupling of being financial literate, but also being culturally literate. Because if you're culturally literate, that's going to dictate how you use your economic prowess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think that those three issues are critical, and if you had to tell that to some folks like right on the corner, right? Like if some folks just came up and said, how do we change this? Um, I think somebody would really appreciate this. There's a thought out there that there's a void in leadership to really speak to real issues, and I don't need you to talk. I don't want you to discuss what you think about present leadership, but I definitely would like you to share what do you think leadership should be looking like right now. You talked about school leaders expectations there, but what do you think community leaders or uh, national leaders should look like?
I think number one, we have to learn from history. There isn't one prescription for what and who a leader should be, particularly when it comes to our country, to our people, right? When we look at Malcolm and we look at Martin, when we look at Booker and we look at Du Bois, we got to learn from history. There isn't one particular angle. There are many particular angles and many ways we're going to need to approach this. We're going to need every Du Bois as well as every Booker T. We're going to need every Malcolm as well as every Martin. There's not one particular type of leadership that we need, unless we get very specific and say, yes, there is a particular type. We need leadership that has integrity. We need leadership that is people focused and not power focused. We need leadership that is doing the work and being elevated because of the work and not because of the title or the position, right? And so I think those are some of the things that we need in leadership, but I certainly don't think that there's a particular model. I think we need to reevaluate what it is and how it is that we think about leadership and recognize the leadership potential across the board in so many faces, whether it be the garbage man or whether it be the principal, right? Whether it be the former street entrepreneur versus some CEO of a company. I think that we can find leadership and value in a range of different people.
It's definitely transferable. Absolutely. So I think that this is an incredible time for us as far as our generation, not necessarily a race, but our generation has an opportunity to really utilize the resources that we've learned, as well as take on what's happening now. I think we're one of the most incredible generations because we've had to do everything. I'm speaking of like we remember how it was before the cell phone. And we were also learning how to incorporate in today's technology, right? How do you see yourself and in the future, utilizing technology, but understanding old school tactics in your next level of being Dr. Small.
Right. I think we'd be foolish not to recognize that we are in a dying technocrat age, and we're moving strongly into an age of technology. And those of us that don't take the time to educate ourselves around it and get to understand what some of this emerging tech is due to our own demise. I think that we have to use the tools that our children are using. We have to use social media to be able to continue to shape our children and shape their minds and shape their futures. And so we have to tap into all of these platforms, whether it be the metaverse, whether it be NFTs, whether it be Web3, whether it be AV, whether it be all of these things. We have to tap into it because we have to meet our children where they're at, and we have to meet the world where it's going in order to truly have a stake in it.
Yeah. Well, this has been incredible. For those that are listening to you and they're trying to decide how they can become a better leader in their community, what words would you have to say to them?
I would say be reflective, get to know yourself, because true leaders are reflective. True leaders look to master themselves before they look to have impact on anyone else.
Be reflective, get to know yourself. That's very important.
And be intentional.
Be intentional. Awesome. Well, see, this was quick, right? Dr. Malik Small, thank you for coming on Phoenix Soul. This was an incredible, informative, as well as, I would say, fun interview. Yeah. And again, you continue to be great. And we wish you the best, hoping that your son comes back soon. And but we know that he's in good hands, though, wherever he is.
That sounds like an awesome young fella. Awesome.
What's his name? Give him a shout out.
Big shout out to my son, Lil Malik.
That's what's up. And any other family members you want to say hello to?
Say what's up to my beautiful wife, Evie, and my mom and my dad, and to all my brothers and sisters, and the very small handful of friends.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. You're listening to Yaz Hurston here, and thank you, Dr. Small. Again, we're so proud of you, and we look to hear more about what's happening at the commission. And again, once you figure that out, how we can be supportive and provide another alternative to a narrative, we're here to do that too.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Phoenix Soul. We will be back next week. DJ D Spence, you're the best. And you could take us out.